Thanks for tuning in once again to the Ourlads Football Network, as I'm being joined by Ryan Dunleavy, who covers the NFL and the New York Giants at the New York Post. And Ryan, the reason we wanted to have you on the program today was because a pretty famous, well-known New York Giants head coach passed away today, Jim Fassel, and I wanted to get you on to talk a little bit about his career. Because even though he didn't win a Super Bowl championship, he had a successful run for 7 seasons.
The great Tom Coughlin, 2 Super Bowl wins. The great Bill Parcells, 2 Super Bowl wins. And Jim Fassel, who was 58, 53-1 from 1997 to 2003. And didn't win a Super Bowl, but got there. One of the great NFC Championship blowouts of all time, walloped the Vikings of Randy Moss 41-0, and then came back and lost one of the great Super Bowl blowouts of all time. I think it was 31 or 34-7 to the great Ravens defense of 2000.
And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if the first thing that you remember about Jim Fassel is what we want to show right now and actually listen to, and that was his guarantee back in the 2000 season that eventually not only led to them making the playoffs, which was his guarantee, but they made it all the way to the Super Bowl. So I know there are some listeners in the audience who just don't remember this time. And if you don't, let's go ahead and play it, because I guarantee that if you're watching most of the NFL channels today, you're probably not going to miss this.
Get off my coach's backs. Get off the players' backs. I'm responsible for the whole thing. I'm raising the stakes right now. This is a poker game. I'm shoving my chips to the middle of the table. I'm raising the ante. Anybody wants in, get in. Anybody wants out, can get out. Okay? This team is going to the playoffs. And that's my whole goal in life right now. I'll set the course. And I'll set the expectations, and they got to live up to them.
And that was just, that's something what were you going to say, Ryan?
Brilliant. I was going to say it's brilliant. Brilliant. It's brilliant. Because the background there is 7-4. If they didn't make the playoffs, he was going to get fired anyway. So he guaranteed that they would make it, and if they don't make it, he's going to get fired, whether he guarantees it or not. So he guarantees it, gives his locker room a rallying cry, shows them how much they believe in him. The Giants win 5 straight. They end up 12-4. They end up, I think, the 1 seed in the NFC and ride that all the way to the Super Bowl. It was a brilliant move. And people forget that Giants team was loaded. That was early career Amani Toomer. It was Kerry Collins after he salvaged his career. And Kerry Collins was a very good quarterback. Doesn't get enough credit. Tiki Barber, who was a borderline Hall of Fame running back. Michael Strahan, obviously a Hall of Fame defensive player. Jesse Armstead, a Giants great in the Ring of Honor. A really good team of guys who probably became better later in their careers, all kind of at the beginning for Fassel. And the guarantee really gave them the confidence boost they needed that season.
And right now, as we're going to talk about it, just showing some of the highlights of that championship game against the Vikings that season. They just annihilated Minnesota. Do you remember that? Championship games don't usually happen like that. I mean, 41-0. It wasn't like this giant team. It's not like we were talking about one of the greatest teams of all time when you can go, oh yeah, I can imagine that. I can imagine Montana and so forth. But this was Jim Fassel of the New York Giants winning a championship game that was just a whitewash from the beginning.
It was a party in the stands. I remember it. And I know people who were there that day. They still talk about it's one of their favorite Giants games they've ever been to because it was just such a party. I think it was 34-35-0 at halftime. The game was over. And that was a Vikings team that was explosive. So to shut them out, I mean, they had all kinds of weapons up and down the field. So to be able to shut them out was really, it was just such a it was, you went into the Super Bowl thinking, all right, maybe the Giants can, this kind of offense, maybe they can hang with those Ray Lewis Ravens. And obviously they couldn't. But no, it was like I said, Fassel. I talked to him as recently. I think I talked to him in 2019. And I still talked very passionately about his time with the Giants. Very, he's almost, you wonder if he's, and I know it would have meant a lot to him if it had happened before his passing, but you almost wonder if he belongs in the Giants Ring of Honor. Like I said, there have been very few coaches in the last, 60 years of the Giants or so that have had winning records and done what he did. So very, very good career. It's very, very interesting that he never got a second head coaching shot, because you see coaches recycled all the time in the NFL back then through today. And for him to go 58, 53-1 in the New York pressure cooker, get to a Super Bowl, and this is a place where guarantees, Joe Namath's guarantee happened here. Mark Messier's guarantee happened here. This is a guaranteed town. You better live up to it, and he did. Very strange he never got a second head coaching shot somewhere in, some rebuilding team, Cincinnati or something like that somewhere along the way.
Before Tom Coughlin won a Super Bowl, how would you have rated Fassel and Coughlin in the eyes of Giant fans as far as their, how they liked the coaches' personalities?
Tom Coughlin won a Super Bowl in his fourth year. So Coughlin was about to get fired after his third year, and then Tiki Barber saved his job with an incredible single-game performance. And Giants fans didn't like him. Giants players didn't like him. So if you're talking about before Coughlin won a Super Bowl, Fassel for sure would have been ahead of him, both in the locker room, among the fans, probably inside the organization. And then Coughlin won that Super Bowl in his fourth year, and that kind of changed everything. It changed how he was viewed inside the organization, outside the organization, and obviously now he's a legendary figure in the organization, far exceeding Jim Fassel's stature.
Do you think that has a lot to do with the fact of why maybe it was just bad timing that Coughlin came after Fassel, won the Super Bowls, beating the undefeated Patriots and everything else that the Giants were able to accomplish under Coughlin? Do you think that had a negative effect on Fassel and how Giant fans and even the media might have, or other coaches' possibilities might have looked at him?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, John Gruden went to Tampa and won a Super Bowl. It didn't affect Tony Dungy. That we've seen that happen, right? The new coach comes in and just kind of finishes the job. No, I don't think so. I really don't know. I wasn't covering the NFL then. I really don't know. I've never really figured out why he went on. I think he became the Ravens offensive coordinator for a while after the Giants. He coached in the United League, some of the other startup leagues, but never really understood why he didn't get a second shot. Quarterback background, offensive coordinator background. It's kind of things that that get you a second head coaching job, and he never got one.
Yeah, and Sean Payton was his coordinator.
Right. He actually had to strip Sean Payton of play calling duties one season and take them back from him, and he actually, took over the play calling from Sean Payton. That's the kind of thing that you say, oh, that offensive coordinator doesn't have it. And, obviously Sean Payton's turned out okay. Yeah. So, Payton was on his coaching tree, and obviously his son is John Fassel, is one of the great special teams coaches in the NFL right now for the Cowboys, long time with the Rams. So the family coaching tree lives on there through John.
And here, just as I show a couple of clips Giant fans don't want to see regarding the Super Bowl, considering how much they dominated Minnesota, Baltimore's defense was incredible. It was one of the all-time best defenses anybody's ever seen in a regular season and in the postseason. So everybody watching the game knew that it was going to be difficult for the Giants. But how do you remember how the fans and what the buildup was like, considering they just dominated the NFC Championship game?
Yeah, I remember people thinking the Giants had a chance. You would have said maybe 2 weeks earlier that you would have said, all right, the Giants, they're going to have a hard time scoring against a team like Baltimore. But then to see what they did to Minnesota, I remember, just living in New Jersey at the time and people thinking all right, we were the 1 seed in the NFC. I think the Ravens were the 4 seed in the AFC at that point. They had the great defense, but their quarterback was Trent Dilfer. They didn't have a lot on offense. I think Jamal Lewis was their workhorse running back, but it wasn't like, okay, we have to win a slugfest. You thought maybe 17 points or something against the Ravens would win that Super Bowl. And obviously the Giants' only offense in that game came on a kick return touchdown, special teams touchdown. And I remember there was a huge controversy. Now, look, they lost the game 30. What did they lose? 34-7, something like that. So one play doesn't really change a game that's that lopsided. But early in that game, the Giants had a touchdown, interception return for a touchdown that was negated by a very, very iffy penalty. And that's kind of a what if for a lot of Giants fans. Like, if we got that defensive touchdown, does that game play out very differently? I know for a fact that Jim Fassel thought about that quite a lot. Long after his Giants career, is what if that goes differently, then we win the Super Bowl. He could have been the coach there for 20 years.
Speaking of what ifs, the next highlight really begins the downturn, because it was really just a couple of years later when they took on San Francisco in that epic collapse. And as I start the highlight here, I'm starting it at 35-14, 4:42 left in the third. And they had the back-to-back incompletions in the back of the end zone, especially on second down, which I'm going to show right here, where Jeremy Shockey, who had such an impact for the Giants over his short career there, just dropped the ball. And if he catches the ball, it's now almost an insurmountable type of psychological it's over kind of thing. And anytime a team, when you're trying to make a comeback, something negative happens to the team who's up, and then the positive, the team that's trailing can kind of move on, and all of a sudden the momentum just changes on a dime. Giants were never able to get that momentum back, and then all of a sudden, the next clip I'm showing is San Francisco going up with a minute to go in the game. It was just an unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, everybody can talk about the Jets' Monday Night Miracle comeback, but this was a playoff game.
Yeah, people. When you hear coaches or players say momentum's not a real thing, momentum doesn't really exist, it's a media creation. This is the game to pull up and show them, because momentum, I remember watching this game and just feeling like when Shockey dropped that ball, you did the math, you were like, okay, so they're up 38-14, that's only 4 possessions, and instead of 5 possessions, and you're like, I guess they could come back, and then just boom, boom, boom. Everything went San Francisco's way. And then the Giants actually, what people forget, Giants should have won that game. And they were lining up for inside 50-yard field goal, 41-yard field goal on the last play of the game, which nowadays is like automatic that you're going to make a 41-yard field goal. But Trey Junkin was the long snapper. The Giants' primary long snapper had been injured. I think their backup long snapper had been injured. And so they basically signed Trey Junkin, who was a long time, like 15-year NFL quality long snapper who was out of the league at that point. They basically signed him off the street and said, hey, can you just fill in for us for the playoffs? How hard is your job to do? And turned out very hard, because he rolled the snap. The holder threw the ball downfield to an offensive lineman. So it was incomplete, and the refs basically ruled it incomplete and ran off the field. In today's world, that would get reviewed, because that offensive lineman was an eligible receiver, so that should have been pass interference against the 49ers, and the Giants would have got to re-kick the field goal, and it would have been even more of a chip shot. You're looking at like a 25-yard field goal. They probably win the game. So, again, one of those, there are probably 3 or 4 of these plays in Jim Fassel's career where it was like an iffy play, and it went against the Giants, and they lost the game. And if any one of them had gone a different way, they get pass interference called there. Yep. They kicked that field goal. He's probably still the coach in 04 and 05. And so very interesting. Then you could even go back to 97 when he was head NFL Coach of the Year, his first year with the Giants, and they blew another playoff game. They had a big lead against the Vikings and lost that playoff game. And Chris Callaway, who was a really good receiver for the Giants, couldn't recover an onside kick in the final 2 minutes. Vikings recovered it and went down and scored 2 touchdowns real quick and won the game. Again, Callaway recovers that. Who knows how far the Giants go in the 97 playoffs. So there's a lot of those what-ifs in Jim Fassel's 7 years.
Okay, so what is give me your best guess on how you think he's going to be remembered by the organization?
Players coach who got a lot out of a team that a lot of really great Giants who were just earlier in their careers. Coughlin got them over the hump, but he got a lot out of a lot of guys who loved to play for him. That he was the ultimate, players coach. Players loved him. He took the blame. He didn't blame them. Tiki Barber is a borderline Hall of Famer, a great Giant. He was a punt returner for the Giants when Jim Fassel, said, no, he's more than that. He's a every down running back. And not a lot of people believed him, and he made Tiki Barber into a 10,000-yard rusher. So I know Tiki thinks very highly of him. Kerry Collins, he gave Kerry Collins his second chance after his alcoholism. Kerry Collins thinks very highly of him. Michael Strahan was emotional talking about him on Good Morning America today. You could tell 20 years later, players loved Jim Fassel. They didn't win with Jim Fassel, but they, win it all with Jim Fassel, but they loved playing for Jim Fassel, and they got a lot out of guys.
So yeah, it's definitely a day to look back, and it's unfortunate because we're only talking about somebody who was 71 years old, and 30 years ago, I think that would have been normal, but today we're living so much older that when you hear somebody dies at 71, you're like, wow, that was kind of young, because guys who are 71 are still coaching. So it's unfortunate.
Nick Saban just signed a deal to take him through age 77.
Yeah, and if Tom Brady keeps it up, he'll still be playing at 71. So, but yeah, bottom line though, it's a day that you remember the good things about someone like Jim Fassel and everything that he did mean for the players that you talked about. And we'll continue to see that during the rest of the day. We'll see how he's remembered during the season because the fans will be at the stadium. So I'm sure there'll be some sort of, remembrance, maybe even on opening day. Who knows? But it's one of those things where, like you said, there was so many ifs in his coaching career, and there are a lot of those with a lot of coaches and players, and Jim Fassel is definitely near the top as far as what if.
One thing I thought showed a lot about Jim Fassel is he got fired late in the 2003 season, and he coached the last, 2 or 3 games after that. He knew he was fired, and he coached the last couple games anyway. He wanted clarity, so he went in and said, I don't want to keep answering questions about this. What's my future? They said, you're done. And he coached the last couple games anyway, which I thought said a lot about then owner Wellington Mara, giving him that opportunity and being upfront with him, and about Jim Fassel wanting to stay on and finish the job he started.
And is there? I'm assuming there's already something out and available in the Post.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's Jim Fassel stories on the nypost.com. Yep.
Yeah, so you can check that out for sure. Because you're assigned to basketball right now?
Baseball today, Mets game.
Okay. And so definitely check out NewYorkPost.com because you'll find out a lot about Jim Fassel, and also NFL Network. It's probably a really good day to check that out as well. You would think that within the next day or two that they should probably throw some of Jim's highlights, as a coach, including that Minnesota championship game. That should definitely be rebroadcast on the NFL Network in the next day or two. You can check it out on YouTube as well. They have it available on YouTube. So that's definitely, but if you have an opportunity, and maybe there are a lot of, your dad, somebody that was a little bit younger that went through that, just let him know. Say, hey, give him a call, give him a text, because I'm going to do that with my dad. And say, hey, check this out, because he'll remember Fassel, and that was the highlight of his career. Obviously, was the championship game against the Vikings.
Yeah, also beat the Eagles in the playoffs, which Tom Coughlin and I think Coughlin was 0-2 against the Eagles in the playoffs. So Giants fans love that.
Oh, okay, he's got something over Tom Coughlin. Also, I want to just quickly remind everybody to check out the Ourlads draft review guide I'm working on right now. It's going to be finished in about a week, actually in 2 weeks. So we should have it ready to go probably by the 1st of July. You can order it now at Ourlads.com. So again, that's the Ourlads draft review guide. Giants, obviously, in here with the other 32 teams, the other 31 teams, and the New York Giants. And we will be talking sometime, unless something else comes up between now and then. Of course, the Julio Jones news. Maybe we'll do something in the next few days or next week regarding that and Aaron Rodgers, if that kind of starts to make news again. But we'll definitely be back once July hits as we get ready for training camp, and it can't come soon enough. I know you probably feel the same way writing for covering baseball right now.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Ryan. Sounds good. Appreciate you taking your short notice for you doing this. I appreciate that, and I know we had some technical difficulties getting on too. So thanks for your patience, and can't wait to talk football with you on a brighter note. But again, hopefully this was the brightest that we can talk about Jim Fassel on a day that's very sad for his family, but we definitely hope it is also a day, I'm sure it will be, that they'll look back at a very, very successful career in the NFL. Because let's always keep that in mind too, Ryan. You don't have to win a Super Bowl to be considered to have a successful professional career in your industry. Fassel had a successful career, and the percentage of people, coaches, head coaches, that can say they had successful careers in the NFL, the percentages are small.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan. We'll talk to you next time. Again, we'll talk Giant football as well soon, too. So for Ryan Dunleavy, I'm Greg DePalma. Again, the Ourlads Football Network. We'll see you for more post-NFL draft coverage, but more importantly, hopefully real soon, NFL training camp coverage coming up in July.